The Qing was the last empire to rule China after the Ming. It was first established not by Chinese, but the Manchus. The Manchus lived in the north of the Great Wall, and how they conquered the Ming? The Manchu was led in through the Great Wall, then they conquered Beijing in 1644 and the Qing dynasty began. The Qing instituted changes in the dress of the Chinese. They required Chinese men to shave their heads and wear queues, and they also required them to wear Manchu clothes.
Qing politics. Since 1644, the Qing dynasty had ruled over China. There were many rebellions against this foreign ruler. So in order to stabilize their power, the Qing emperor established some policies to control over the Manchus and the Chinese. Kangxi Emperor adapted the political system from Ming dynasty and created a system known as diarchy, where the administrative positions were shared equally by the Chinese and the Manchus. He also improved the civil service examination system to be more equal. This made the Chinese gradually accept the Manchus. Kangxi also studied Confucian classics and wrote an imperial edict called Sacred Edict for the people to live together ethically. The emperor developed a special military unit called Bannerman as the fighting force of the empire. China on the eve of the Western onslaught. Under the reign of Qianlong, there were many signs of the declination of Qing dynasty. The internal conflict like corruption, the emperor indulging in the luxuries, and the suppression of the White Lotus rebellion. The international conflicts were also the factors. The Western countries refused to do the traditional act of begging called koutou. And the tributary system that Chinese had offered. With a neighboring country like Russia, they had an agreement on the Treaty of Nanjing. This pacified the northern frontier of the Chinese Empire. And with the superpower countries from the west, one that Chinese had to deal with was the Britain. The Opium War began because the British was offended by the Chinese rejecting their products, including opiums. The result of this war was the economic collapse, and Hong Kong became one of the British colonial.
The population explosion. The origin of Ming Chinese civilization was located along the Yellow River, which had a central administration in the north. In Song Dynasty, according to the climatic change, northern China couldn't support population to live anymore. Therefore, in the late of Ming and the early Qing dynasty, the central administration is moved to the southern. In Qing dynasty, the population was further increasing from 100 million to 400 million in only 130 years. There were many factors which lead to a fast population growth.
The seeds of industrialization. Another check during the early modern period in China was the steady growth of manufacturing and commerce. Merchants and manufacturers began to expand their operations beyond their immediate province. Commercial networks began to operate on regional and a national basis as trade in steel, metal, and wood products. Then, Chinese merchants set up extensive contact with countries in Southeast Asia. China was not as independent as their European counterparts because Chinese political and social prejudice against commercial activity remained strong, reflecting an ancient preference for agriculture over manufacturing and commerce. The state derived heavy taxes on manufacturing and commerce, while attempts to keep agricultural taxes low. One consequence of this difference was growing technology gap between China and Europe. For example, early 17th century, the manual lathe introduced advanced European clock driven by weight or spring. The emperor found the clock more reliable than Chinese method keeping time.
During the Manchu dynasty, Most women gave up their occupations they held in the Ming Dynasty, as the Chinese family had great social influence. Women's responsibilities were vast, including taking care of the sick, indigent, and elderly. The family was responsible for the moral education of the children, as well as regular secular education. Religious life was taught and practiced through ancestor worship at the family altar in the home. The father was the patriarch of the family, or if he was not available, then the eldest son was. Women were not allowed to obtain a divorce. Reasons for divorce were barrenness of the wife. Infant girls were subject to the infanticide as soon as they were born, and it was not considered a crime. They could also be sold into servitude or concubinage. Beginning at the age of 3, the girls' toes were broken and made to turn underbound with material. Deaths did occur from infection, but this practice was done for centuries until theoretically outlawed in 1902.
The rise of Chinese novel. Although Chinese novel was considered less respectable than poetry and non-fiction prose, these works were widely popular, especially among well-to-do urban dwellers. Most novels are often written anonymously or under pen name and in informal style. The new fiction was characterized by a realism. Many stories describe the sympathy of society's oppression, mostly about love, money, marriage, and power. During the more puritanical in Qing era, the more erotic works were censored and banned. The Dream of the Red Chamber, in Chinese called Hong Lou Meng, also called the Story of the Stone. It was composed by Chao Xuexin. The Dream of the Red Chamber is generally considered to be China's most distinguished popular novel, and it is one of China's 4 great classical novels. It was published in 1791 after The Golden Lotus.
The Golden Lotus, in Chinese called Jin Ping Mei. This novel shows the social and citizens' attitude and perspective.
During the Qing dynasty, artists produced great quantity of paintings, mostly for home consumption. Inside the Forbidden City in Beijing, court painters worked alongside Jesuit artists and experimented with Western techniques. However, did not greatly influence Chinese painting at that time. Scholarly painters totally rejected foreign techniques and became obsessed with traditional Chinese style. As a result, Qing painting became progressively more repetitive and staid. Ironically, the Qing dynasty represents the apogee of traditional Chinese art and the beginning of its decline.